If I had given you $10,000 to invest in sports cards across different sports and different eras, how would those investments have performed? Today on Sports Card Investor, we've got the results and they're going to shock you.
My name is Geoff Wilson. By day, I invest in tech companies, and at night, I invest in sports cards. Join me and my team as we help you profit from the hobby we all love.
Hello, sports card investors, and welcome to a special episode. We are diving into some incredible sports card data today to show you where the market has been hot and where the market has been cold at a level of detail that you have never seen before. This is all possible because we built a brand new feature into Market Movers called the Market Pulse, and you are about to see it in action, and we're gonna show you all of the goodness that comes out from it. Because I want to answer this question in today's show. If I had given you $10,000 on January 1st, and I said, you can pick any sport and any era to invest this in, but you can only pick one sport and one era, what would you have picked? And what would have done the best for you? We know that answer today, and the answer is fascinating. The answer really surprised me. I think the answer might surprise you as well. But before I show you the answer, before I give you the data, tell me in the comments. Tell me in the comments right now, before you see the data, if I had given you $10,000 back on January 1st, what sport would you have put it in? And what era? Meaning really old vintage or 80s cards or 90s cards or cards from the 2000s or ultra modern? Tell me in the comments. You're gonna find out if you're right here in just a minute. So let me show you this feature in Market Movers. This is the Market Pulse. And what we have built is the most comprehensive look at the sports card market ever created. We have created Market Pulse indexes for different sports and different eras. All these different sports. We've got hockey, we've got soccer, and we're not going to cover those today, but they're in here. We've got every Prism basketball rookie class and Prism football rookie class and Prism World Cup Soccers. We have player indexes, an incredible amount of different indexes to look at. Each of these indexes, and I'm going to start by selecting baseball from 2018 to 2020, is comprised of all of the most popular cards from that sport and that era. So you can see the cards here that are the most popular cards from that baseball 2018 to 2020 include things like Juan Soto's rookie card from Topps Chrome, Shohei Ohtani's Bowman card, Vlad Guerrero's card, etc. Wander Franco, all of the players that you would expect to see that are the most popular players and cards from that era. And you can now look at how all of that combination of cards together has performed over time, going back to the first of this year. So it's almost like a mutual fund. If you had taken $10,000 and you had put it across all of the most popular baseball cards from 2018 to 2020, how would that $10,000 have performed? Well, here's your answer. And as you can see, it is down 7.2%. That means that your $10,000 on January 1st invested in baseball from 2018 to 2020 would be worth today $9,280. Not so hot. So let's go to a little bit of an earlier era. Let's look at baseball from 2010 to 2017. So you got things like Mike Trout's rookie cards in this era and Mookie Betts and other big players like that. This era is down 2.6% since the start of the year, meaning your $10,000 would be worth $9,740 if you put it in baseball from 2010 to 2017. What about baseball from the 2000s? What about 2000 and 2009? Players like Ichiro and Albert Pujols. Well, that $10,000 would be worth $9,240. It is down even more. It is down 7.6% from January 1st. That's not where you would have wanted to put your money. So let's get a little older. Let's look at the 1990s. What about baseball cards from the 1990s? What about Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera and other great players from that era? Oh, they're up. They're up 3.1% since the beginning of the year as a collective. So if you had invested all $10,000 in 1990s baseball cards, you'd have $10,310 today. What about 1980s baseball? Let's take a look. This is baseball from the 1980s. Tony Gwynn, Cal Ripken Jr., Roger Clemens, Mark McGwire, Rickey Henderson, Wade Boggs, Ken Griffey, Kirk Gibson, all these great players. Ryan Sandberg from the 1980s. Guess what? It's up 7%. It's the 1980s players, the junk wax era players that are up 7% more than any other baseball cards made since that time. Your $10,000 would be worth $10,700 today, just a few months later. Let's go back to the 1970s. What about baseball cards in the 1970s? Reggie Jackson and cards like that. Actually, the 60s and 70s. We combined the 60s and 70s together, 1960 through 1979 baseball. We combined them together into one era. So you got players like Reggie Jackson, he's 1969, his card. Carl Yastrzemski, Pete Rose, Willie McCovey, Nolan Ryan, Johnny Bench, those types of players, up 3.8%. So if you had invested in 60s and 70s baseball cards, your $10,000 would be worth today $10,380. Let's go older. What about 1940s and 1950s baseball cards? What about Mickey Mantles and Willie Mays and Jackie Robinsons? They're down slightly. They're down 1.1%. Your $10,000 would be worth $9,890. Did that surprise you? Now, you may have seen all of the headlines recently in the sports card market about Babe Ruth cards and Jackie Robinson cards selling for record numbers. So you may think that, and Mickey Mantles, right? So you may think that baseball cards from the 40s and the 50s and before are all going up in value. What's actually happening is the very top of the market is going up in value. Those cards in extremely high grades, and those are very rare cards that they're only sold occasionally. Those ones have been going up in value. The more common cards, the more common grades, the cards that you see more sales volume around from the 1940s and the 1950s, which is what we built into our market pulse, those ones have actually gone down in value a little bit, down 1.1% over the course of this year so far to date. What about the real old stuff? What about baseball from 1909 to 1939? What about those cards? What about Babe Ruth's cards and Ted Williams cards and Ty Cobb's cards? They're up, but ever so slightly. And again, these are not the super highest end grades. When we're looking at these types of cards, we're looking at like PSA 4s of some of Babe Ruth's 1933 Gaudy cards and that type of thing. They're up a little bit. They're up 0.4%. That means your $10,000 would be worth just slightly over $10,000 today. But it would be worth slightly more. That's the look at baseball overall. So the best decade that you could have invested in at the beginning of this year, believe it or not, was 1980s baseball cards from the junk wax era. Those have performed the best. But what about football and basketball? Let's take a look at football right now. Let's go to football and let's take a look at the newest football. Let's take a look at 2018 through 2020. So you got Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Would you believe that these cards are down 11.2%? And it's a very distinct pattern. You can see if you go back to the first of the year, these cards heated up going into the Super Bowl. And then you can see what has happened since the Super Bowl. And that's no surprise because we are now in football's off season. So oftentimes you see football cards heating up as the season goes on and you get into the playoffs. And once the season ends, cards dip in price. That's exactly what has happened with the football card index. These 2018 to 2020 football cards are down 11.2%. That means your $10,000 would be worth $8,880 today. Let's look at 2010 through 2017 football. And guys, this is a bloodbath. This is a bloodbath. 2010 through 2017 football cards are down 23.4% since the start of the year. Your $10,000 would be worth only $7,660. A lot of it is driven by Patrick Mahomes. Many of his cards are down after the Chiefs had a somewhat disappointing end to their season. What about football cards from the 2000s? What about 2000 to 2009 football? They're down a lot too. They're down 17.3% since the first of the year. Your $10,000 would be worth only $8,270 today. And we've actually seen Brady's cards decline. So Brady's responsible for this. Again, on the lower end, not the $1 million Brady cards, but on the lower end, Brady's cards have declined, as have Aaron Rodgers' cards. So that is affecting those two. Ben Roethlisberger's down. Those are affecting this era considerably and causing it to really, really sag. What about football cards from the 90s? What about 1990 through 1999 football? Guys like Emmitt Smith and Peyton Manning and Ray Lewis. These cards are down 12.6%. It's not been good for 90s football cards either. Those are down quite a bit as well. So let's go back and look at the 1980s. Look at that graph. It's doing the total opposite of all of the other eras of football. Just like 1980s baseball was the hottest era of baseball since the beginning of the year, would you believe that 1980s football is the hottest era of football? And these cards are up a lot. These cards are up 14.9%. The junk wax era of football cards, your $10,000 would lead you today to have $11,490. That would have been a nice return on your investment since the start of the year. Players like Lawrence Taylor, his cards have been up a lot. Of course, a lot of these cards are relatively rare in high condition. Not a ton of sales of them. But you got Eric Dickerson, Ronnie Lott, Steve Young, Barry Sanders cards have been on the rise. These cards have been increasing the value of 1980s football cards overall. That was actually your best investment in the football era. But let's look at 1979 and before. Let's look at older football cards. Actually, these ones have done extremely well too. Football cards from 1979 and prior, your older football cards are up 10.2% since the start of the year. Joe Namath, Walter Payton, Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach, Mike Ditka, Fran Tarkenton, those cards have been doing well as a whole. Your $10,000 today would be worth $11,200 if you had invested in 1979 and older football at the beginning of the year. But what surprised me again with football was that junk wax era from the 1980s, just like baseball, that has done the best since the start of the year. Are we going to see the same pattern with basketball? Let's take a look right now. And guys, I'm going to warn you in advance, some of this basketball data, it's a little ugly. Let's start with basketball from 2018 to 2020. So players like Luka, LaMelo, Zion, Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards. As a whole, these cards are down 17.6% since the start of the year. If you have a lot of ultra-modern basketball cards, unfortunately, you have likely done poorly since the year started. $10,000 purchased of ultra-modern basketball cards back at January 1st is probably worth $8,240 today based on how the market has dropped. Let's go a little earlier and let's look at basketball from 2010 through 2017. Players like Devin Booker and Joel Embiid and Giannis and Kobe and Jason Tatum. Kobe, not his rookie card, of course, just some of his early Prism stuff. These cards are down 10.4% since the start of the year. So a little less. They haven't done as bad, but they're still down 10.4%. That means your $10,000 would be worth $8,960 today. Let's look at basketball from the 2000s. 2000 to 2009 basketball, guys, this is ugly. 2000 to 2009 basketball cards are down 29.1% since the start of the year. This is the worst performing index out of all of the indexes that we're tracking. 2000s basketball has been a bloodbath. Your $10,000 would be worth $7,090 today, just a few months later. And LeBron, as you might imagine, is a large part of that, but Steph Curry is a large part of that as well, because Steph Curry's cards were unbelievably hot to end 2021. And unfortunately, that's when they were peaking out. And now as the Warriors have cooled off and Steph has cooled off and hasn't been playing as much, his cards have slid over the course of this year. And that's a large reason why basketball cards from 2000 through 2009 have been performing so poorly. KD's cards are way down as well. LeBron, Steph, and KD, they are all really beat up in price right now. Does that mean it's a good investment opportunity for these guys? What do you think? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I love those guys for the long term. The question is this the bottom of the market? Or will they continue maybe to go down during the offseason? Personally, I'm waiting, going to watch what the market does. I think they may continue to go down more, believe it or not, but I do think there are some strong buying opportunities ahead for these guys for sure. All right, let's go a little further back in time. Let's look at basketball from the 1990s. Basketball from the 1990s is down 8.6% since January 1st. That means that your $10,000 would be worth $9,140. And that's some Michael Jordan cards. That's Kobe rookies, which continue to go down in value. Kevin Garnett, Shaq, Dirk, etc. Allen Iverson, down as a collective 8.6% since the start of the year. Let's look at basketball in the 1980s. This is unbelievable. Again, the 1980s cards across all sports have been the best performing cards this year to date. Since January 1st, 1980s basketball is up 3%. That may not sound like a lot, but that is a lot considering all of the other eras of basketball we just showed were all down a lot. So the 80s cards are up. They're up 3% since the start of the year. Of course, you got Michael Jordan in there. You got the 1980 Larry Bird, Magic Johnson card. You got Scottie Pippen's rookies, Dennis Rodman's rookies, Reggie Miller's rookies, Dominique Wilkins rookies, etc. And they're up 3%. So your $10,000 would be worth $10,300 today. And finally, let's look at basketball 1979 and older. This jumps around a little more because there's not as many of these cards for sale. And so one sale can throw the index off in either direction a little more. At the moment, they're down 3.9%. So your $10,000 investment in 1979 and older basketball on January 1st today would leave you with $9,610. And that's in players like Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, etc. Now, once again, these are not the top of the market cards that are selling for $500,000 at auction. These are the more affordable, so to speak, everyday cards that are selling on eBay slightly lower grades, PSA 8s that are selling for $2,000 or $3,000 as opposed to the PSA 10s that are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's what this is showing. So the answer to the question, going back to the beginning of the episode, if you had put $10,000 in any sport and any era, the one that would have absolutely done the best for you, you've got 1980s football and even 1979 and older football as your top performing sport and your top performing era. You also would have done well with 1980s baseball. And out of all the basketball cards, 1980s basketball would have been your best bet as well. Did you find this as surprising as I did? I would not. I look at the data every day, and I would not have predicted that it was the 80s cards that have been the best since January 1. But this feature in Market Movers is the first time that anybody can look at this type of data in this type of granular detail. It wasn't possible until we just added this new Market Pulse feature into Market Movers, and we are going to continue to add more and more and more indexes so we can break up the sports card hobby in an extreme amount of detail and really understand what the market is doing. If you're curious about what soccer's doing or what hockey's doing or what specific years are doing, it's all in Market Movers. And if you want to try the new Market Pulse feature for free, you can try it for free for 7 days. You use promo code TRIAL. All you have to do is go to sportscardinvestor.com, click on Market Movers in the main menu bar, and when you're signing up, use promo code TRIAL. We're going to give you 7 days of the new Market Pulse feature and all of the features in Market Movers to check out for free. All right, guys, let me know in the comments what you thought, what surprised you the most. Thanks for watching. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and we'll see you back in a couple of days with our next episode. Take care.